Welcome to my little slice of heaven over here, and boy oh boy, do I have a special one for you today. This is my childhood console, the Sega Genesis Model 1. I have so many memories with this thing growing up. Kids from all over the block would walk over to play this Sega console with me. Let me show you around. Here she is in all of her glory. Dirty, a little yellowed, and it looks like something got spilled on it or something. On to the fire hazard. I mean the power supply. This is what a power supply looks like when you're Zach and you're a child. I actually remember the day that this duct tape got put on here. Maybe we'll do story time a little later. The last thing I found in the storage box, besides a few games, was the controller. Again with the duct tape, and there's something rattling around on the inside when I shake it. This thing hasn't worked or turned on for at least 15 years or so, and that's being generous with the numbers. The state of the power supply, the way it looks, just screams, don't plug me in. So against my better judgment, let's plug it in, see what happens. Well, I'd imagine that's probably a start as to why it doesn't work. I dug in my box of old random cords and found a male end of a barrel jack that seemed to fit just perfect into the Genesis. I'll use my bench power supply this time. Per the back of the original power supply, the center of the barrel jack is negative and the outside is positive at 10 volts DC. First try, nothing. Not even a light. Well, let's try again with clean cartridge this time. I don't think these games have ever properly been cleaned. Blown in, not cleaned. Here we go. Second try. Nothing. Third try. I honestly couldn't believe that it turned on. The controller initially wasn't reading any inputs, but with a little wiggling, I got things mostly working. It's right about this time that you're probably asking, but Zach, where's the sound? Great question. It's outputting sound. There is none. And if you take a look at the image, it appears there might actually be some graphical glitches as well. With the lack of a working LED on the front, broken power supply, and just the way it looks, no wonder it got stored away. Poor thing's still trying to limp along and work for me. It's all right, old girl. Let's see if I can make this right again. We've got to start somewhere, so I grabbed the most broken thing I saw. After removing the duct tape, the 3 hex screws need to get removed. It was around 1999 or so when this broke. After I showed my father that the Sega wasn't turning on anymore, he grabbed the power supply, some tools from the tool chest, and brought it over to the kitchen table. It was like watching an electrical wizard take the power supply apart and MacGyver the wires back together, I'm sure with whatever supplies he could scrap together. It doesn't look like much now, but his repair lasted for many, many years after. Oh man, look how hot the board got down here. I knew that I'd be discharging some capacitors, so I built a new resistor array that I could clamp to my multimeter. Everything was discharged and checked. The power supply should be safe to touch now. So I don't know if you can see this, but there is a blown diode in the middle of the array here. I added some flux and some fresh solder to all of the pads. Then I pulled the blown diode out and cleaned the pads off. Just take a look at this thing. No wonder the power supply started smoking. Per the markings on the diode, I need some 200 volt, 2 amp diodes in this casing, and here's the part number I used on the screen if you're curious. When you order diodes, you get like a million of them, so I'll just replace the rest of the diodes on the board as well. And I did order a 3300 microfarad 16 volt capacitor to replace this one, but everyone keeps canceling my order. The original one tested fine, but if anyone knows a good place to order apparently weird capacitors, let me know. The board was stripped of the capacitor, diodes, and output wires, then cleaned off with some IPA. We'll leave it like this until the replacement parts come in the mail. Let's move on to the main console. Under the unit, there are 6 Phillips screws that need to be removed so that the top half of the shell can be lifted. Next come 7 more screws to remove the top metal shielding. 3 black Phillips screws unmount the heatsink from the bottom of the shell, followed by 2 screws holding the voltage regulators to the side. 3 more screws are hiding on both sides of the cartridge slot and under the headphone jack in the front. The last 2 screws hold the heatsink down on the underside of the motherboard. While pulling the motherboard out, I noticed that the capacitors were starting to leak onto the board, specifically right here and right here. And that would make sense. I would imagine the audio is controlled around the headphone jack area. Man, anything made by Sega in this era suffers from this problem. I purchased a capacitor kit from Council 5 and embarked on the long journey of replacing all these capacitors on the board. Replacing the caps took most of a Saturday, but I'm proud to announce that no pads were lifted or torn. If you're wondering how many caps were replaced, my answer is this many. Check out the final result. All of the not plastic riveted pieces were removed from the top half of the shell and dropped into some soapy water. Let's see if we can scrub the shell clean. This is going to look so good when we're done. I place the pieces to the side to dry. While things are drying, let's head back to the work table and get started on the controller. 6 more Phillips screws were removed from the back of the controller to release the shell from the board. All of the buttons and membranes were pulled out. Honestly, this doesn't look that bad, and that's kind of surprising knowing how hard I used it. Again, duct tape was removed, revealing a partially exposed rubber joint at the top of the controller. I think we can actually save this cord, but first we have to remove the adhesive. We'll let the end of the controller sit in some IPA while we clean up this controller like we did with the council shell in soapy water. As long as I'm going to take up the whole countertop for a night, I might as well fill it up. Using 100% IPA, the motherboard was cleaned of all flux from the recapping, and all the ports were heavily scrubbed. Amazing what debris you find in a 30-year-old cartridge slot. The reset button and start button were quite yellowed from all the hard years of service. Let's see if we can bring back the original color. Hydrogen peroxide was applied to the outside of the pieces using a soft bristle brush. Try saying that 5 times fast. The pieces were then placed in a Ziploc bag and placed inside a UV light container that I quick rigged up. It took a couple days, but eventually the pieces were pulled back out to be rinsed off with some water. That looks so much better, just like new. Ooh baby, on to our first reassembly, the controller. First the controller board, then the rubber conductive membranes were cleaned off with some alcohol. With the front faceplate facing downward, all the buttons were placed into the appropriate sites, then the membranes over the top of them. With the board partially fixed in the back portion of the shell, the front and the back half of the shells were snapped back together, making sure that all the screw holes and the mounts were aligned. After checking the alignment around the shell, the 6 screws were reinserted into the back. I thought about how I was going to fix the controller plug overnight and had a revelation while I was falling asleep. First, I added a little super glue to the internal wires to give the site some extra rigidity. After the glue cured, I picked up a product called liquid tape. After a couple thin coats of this product around the affected site and a 24-hour curing time, this is how it looked. Good news, the diodes came in the mail for the power supply. I wasted no time jumping back into that project. First, the capacitor was cleaned up and soldered back into place. Using some 3D printed forming tools, all 4 diodes were bent back into the shapes that you see here. Paying close attention to the directions indicated by the board, the diodes were first tacked into place. After I was satisfied with the height and the spacing of the diodes, they were fully saturated and secured into their sites. The barrel jack cord that we used with my power supply will fit nicely as a replacement for the old one. After testing for continuity and the correct polarity indicated by the back of the unit, the positive and negative sides of the cord were soldered into place. The rubber end of the cord was trimmed down to be compatible with the housing. All the diode legs were trimmed, the board cleaned, and the front and the back of the shell were screwed back together using the 3 screws from before. Let's see how we did. I plugged the power supply into a power strip that I could quickly switch off. As you can see, the trust between me and it is quite low. Here we go. Nothing's smoking. That's a good start. It doesn't feel hot yet. It looks like we're getting 13.61 volts out of the end, which is exactly what we need. The back of the supply says 10 volts. However, that's measured before the load of the Genesis. I think we fixed it. Looks like everything's ready to go back together on the main console. After cleaning the metal shielding, the bottom half of the shell and the bottom shielding were dropped together. Some thermal compound was added to the power regulators, then the heat sink was screwed into the bottom of the motherboard using the 2 screws. The board was slid into the shell, then the power regulators were screwed into the heatsink using the 2 Phillips screws shown here. The rest of the heatsink was screwed down, as was the cartridge slot, so that the top half of the metal shielding could be placed. About 1,000,000 screws later, our newly brightened reset button gets inserted into its slot. Here you go, old girl. Here's a brand new red LED. May it serve you well for many years to come. The only thing left is secure the top and the bottom half of the shell with its 6 final screws. Let's see how everything turned out. The Genesis works just like new. All of the faults that we found in the beginning were solved by the recapping and cleaning of the unit. The screen looks crystal clear. Great sound, bright red LED. I'm super excited to play through my old library of games again and relive some of my childhood. Thanks again for hanging out with me. It's so cool that this platform lets me connect with like-minded individuals such as yourself. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Lets me know I'm on the right track. I can't wait to work on the next project. I'll see you in the next one.